The vastness of space stretched endlessly before the small human exploration vessel as it glided silently through the inky blackness. Aboard the ship, the crew went about their duties, monitoring systems and scanning the surrounding stars for any signs of life or points of interest. It had been a long and arduous journey, with the crew growing weary from the monotony of the endless void. But their spirits lifted when the sensors detected a faint signal coming from a nearby planet, one that had not been charted or explored before. "Captain, we're detecting an unusual energy signature from the third planet in this system," reported the young navigator, her fingers dancing across the ship's console. "It doesn't match any known stellar or planetary emissions." The captain, a seasoned explorer with decades of experience, furrowed his brow. "That's curious. Bring us in for a closer look, but maintain a safe distance until we can determine the source." With a nod, the navigator adjusted the ship's course, steering it cautiously towards the uncharted world. As they approached, the crew could make out the planet's features, a swirling mix of blues, greens, and browns, not unlike their own homeworld of Earth. Scanning the planet's surface, the science officer announced, his eyes fixed on the readouts before him. "I'm detecting signs of life, but the energy signature appears to be emanating from a remote mountainous region." The captain considered their options. "Prep a small away team. We'll take a shuttle down to investigate." Minutes later, the sleek shuttlecraft detached from the mothership, its thrusters igniting as it descended towards the planet's surface. The team, consisting of the captain, the science officer, and 2 security personnel, kept a watchful eye out for any potential threats as they navigated the rugged terrain. As they drew closer to the source of the energy signature, the captain could feel a growing sense of unease. Something about this place felt off. His hand instinctively moved towards the holstered sidearm at his hip. "There," the science officer pointed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I see something up ahead." Cresting a ridge, the away team finally laid eyes on the origin of the mysterious energy readings, a small, crumpled form lying amidst the jagged rocks. "It's a child," the captain exclaimed, his heart racing as he recognized the humanoid features. "Quickly, see if it's still alive." The security officers rushed to the child's side, gently turning the motionless body over. The science officer quickly scanned the child, his expression grave. "It's alive, but barely. We need to get it back to the ship immediately for medical treatment." Without hesitation, the captain tapped his communicator. "This is the away team. We've located the source of the energy signature. It's a wounded child. Prep the med bay and have a medical team standing by. We're bringing it aboard now." As the shuttle lifted off, the captain cast one final glance at the remote, inhospitable landscape. Whatever had happened to this child, he was determined to find out, and to see that it was cared for and protected. Little did he know, the rescue of this small, vulnerable being would soon spark a conflict that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Council and test the resolve of humanity itself. With the wounded alien child safely aboard their ship, the human exploration crews sprang into action. The ship's chief medical officer, a seasoned veteran with decades of experience, immediately began administering emergency treatment, working tirelessly to stabilize the child's fragile condition. As the child's vital signs slowly stabilized, the captain convened an urgent meeting with his senior staff. "We need to figure out what happened to this child and where it came from. Run a full diagnostic on the onboard sensors and see if you can pinpoint the location of its homeworld." The science officer nodded, already typing commands into his console. "Right away, Captain. I'll also send out a broad-spectrum distress signal, in case there are any other ships or settlements in the vicinity that may be able to provide more information." "Good thinking," the captain replied. "In the meantime, I want this child protected at all costs. Post additional security around the medbay, and restrict access to only essential personnel." With his orders given, the crew sprang into action, each member fulfilling their designated role with a sense of purpose and urgency. The captain, however, couldn't shake the growing feeling of unease that had settled in the pit of his stomach. Just as the diagnostic was nearing completion, a sudden hail came in from the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. They're demanding to speak with you immediately." The captain's brow furrowed, his jaw tightening. The Galactic Council, the governing body that represented the interests of countless alien civilizations across the galaxy, rarely made direct contact with individual exploration crews. Something must have caught their attention. Steeling himself, the captain made his way to the bridge, taking a deep breath before activating the communication channel. "This is Captain Erickson of the exploration vessel Endeavor. What can I do for the Galactic Council?" The holographic image of a stern-faced counselor flickered to life, their features harsh and uncompromising. "Captain Erickson, we've been informed of your discovery on the remote planet in Sector 7. You are currently in possession of an alien child that rightfully belongs to the Galactic Council." The captain felt a surge of protectiveness wash over him. This child was found injured and in need of immediate medical attention. "My crew and I are simply providing aid and shelter until we can determine its origin and safely return it to its people." The counselor's eyes narrowed, their voice taking on a menacing tone. "That will not be necessary, Captain. The child is a ward of the Galactic Council, and we demand its immediate extradition. Failure to comply will result in severe consequences." The captain's grip tightened on the console, his knuckles turning white. "With all due respect, Counselor, I cannot in good conscience hand over this child to an entity that seems intent on causing it harm. My crew and I will do whatever it takes to ensure its safety and well-being." For a moment, the counselor was silent, their gaze piercing through the captain like a razor-sharp blade. Then, without warning, the transmission abruptly cut off, leaving the bridge in a tense, heavy silence. The captain turned to his crew, his eyes hardening with determination. "Prepare the ship for potential conflict. We may be about to face the wrath of the Galactic Council." News of the Galactic Council's demand for the return of the wounded alien child spread quickly across the human colonies, igniting a firestorm of outrage and indignation. World leaders, once content to maintain a respectful distance from the affairs of the Galactic Council, now found themselves thrust into the center of the brewing conflict. Televised addresses and emergency parliamentary sessions echoed with a singular, unifying cry: "We will not surrender the child." "The Galactic Council has overstepped its bounds," the President of the United States declared in a televised address, her voice resonating with righteous anger. "This child is under the protection of the human race, and we will not bow to their demands, no matter the consequences." Across the globe, her sentiments were echoed by leaders from every corner of the world, each adding their own unique cultural and political perspectives to the growing chorus of defiance. "The Galactic Council has long acted with impunity, subjugating and exploiting vulnerable alien races," thundered the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. "But this time, they have picked a fight with the wrong species. Humanity will stand firm, united in our resolve to protect the innocent child in our care." As the war of words escalated, the public responded with an outpouring of support. Massive rallies and demonstrations erupted in every major city, with citizens of all walks of life waving banners and chanting slogans in defense of the alien child. "Hands off our child," they cried, their voices rising in a thunderous roar. "The Galactic Council has no right to take it from us." The crew of the Endeavor, watching the unfolding events with a mix of pride and trepidation, knew that their simple act of compassion had now become a defining moment in human history. The fate of the child had become inextricably linked to the future of their species, and they were determined to see it through. "We won't let them take the child," the captain told his crew, his gaze unwavering. "The Galactic Council may have the might of their armada, but we have something far more powerful: the unwavering spirit of humanity." As the ultimatum from the Galactic Council loomed, the world held its breath, united in its defiance and ready to face the consequences of its decision, to protect the vulnerable alien child at all costs. As the groundswell of human defiance echoed across the galaxy, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the escalating crisis. The members, their faces etched with a mixture of concern and indignation, debated the appropriate course of action. "Humanity has left us no choice," the counselor who had confronted Captain Erickson earlier declared, slamming a fist onto the table. "They have openly defied our authority and refused to surrender the child. We must act swiftly and decisively to restore order. But the consequences of such action could be catastrophic," another counselor interjected, her voice laced with trepidation. "Provoking a direct conflict with the human species would be unprecedented and could have far-reaching ramifications across the entire galactic community." The debate raged on, as the counselors weighed the potential risks and benefits of their next move. Ultimately, it was the head counselor, a venerable figure whose word carried the weight of centuries of tradition, who brought the discussion to a close. "Enough," the head counselor said, raising a hand to silence the others. "We have deliberated long enough. The time for diplomacy has passed. We must send a clear message to the humans that their defiance will not be tolerated." With a grave nod, the counselors reached a consensus, and the head counselor turned to face the holographic projections that displayed the gathered representatives of the various alien civilizations. "Citizens of the Galactic Council," the head counselor's voice boomed, commanding the attention of all present. "The human species has proven itself unwilling to cooperate with our lawful demands. Therefore, we have no choice but to issue an ultimatum. Surrender the child immediately, or face the full might of the Galactic Council's military forces." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled delegates as the gravity of the head counselor's words sank in. The prospect of a direct confrontation with humanity, a species whose technological prowess and military might were still largely unknown, filled the room with a palpable sense of unease. As the transmission ended, the Endeavor's crew, who had been monitoring the Galactic Council's proceedings, exchanged solemn glances. They knew that the time for diplomacy had passed, and that the fate of the alien child now rested on their ability to withstand the impending onslaught of the Galactic Council's armada. "Prepare the ship for battle," Captain Erickson ordered, his voice steady and resolute. "We'll defend the child at all costs, even if it means standing against the might of the entire Galactic Council." With a renewed sense of purpose, the crew sprung into action, each member working tirelessly to ensure that the Endeavor would be ready to face the coming storm. For the sake of the vulnerable child in their care, they were willing to risk everything. As the Endeavor's crew worked tirelessly to prepare the ship for the impending confrontation with the Galactic Council's forces, a palpable sense of tension filled the air. The looming deadline set by the Council's ultimatum cast a dark shadow over the proceedings, and every crew member knew that the fate of the vulnerable alien child rested on their shoulders. In the medbay, the chief medical officer and her team continued their efforts to stabilize the child's condition, working around the clock to ensure its survival. The captain, his brow furrowed with concern, visited the medbay regularly, seeking updates on the child's progress. "How is our young guest faring?" the captain asked, his voice laced with a mixture of worry and determination. The chief medical officer looked up from her work, her expression grim. "The child is still in a critical state, Captain. We've managed to stabilize its vital signs, but it's far from being out of the woods. The injuries it sustained were severe, and we're doing everything we can to aid its recovery." The captain nodded solemnly, his jaw tightening. "Keep me informed of any changes, Doctor. I want that child to have the best chance of survival, no matter what happens." With a reassuring nod, the medical officer returned her attention to the task at hand, her skilled hands moving with practiced precision as she tended to the child's wounds. Elsewhere on the ship, the science officer and his team were working around the clock to establish communication with any potential allies who might be willing to join the fight against the Galactic Council. They knew that the human race, no matter how resolute, would be vastly outnumbered and outgunned in a direct confrontation with the Council's formidable military might. We've managed to establish contact with a few sympathetic alien civilizations, the science officer reported, his eyes scanning the readouts on his console. They've agreed to provide whatever assistance they can, but their resources are limited, and they're reluctant to provoke the Galactic Council directly. The captain let out a frustrated sigh. Every bit of help counts, but I was hoping for a more robust response. We'll need to be prepared to face the Council's forces alone if necessary. As the final preparations were made, the crew gathered in the ship's main briefing room, their faces etched with a mixture of determination and apprehension. The captain stood before them, his gaze sweeping across the room. "Listen up, everyone," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "In the coming hours, we may face the greatest challenge our species has ever encountered. The Galactic Council has made it clear that they will stop at nothing to reclaim the child in our care." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "But we will not surrender. We will stand firm, united in our resolve to protect the innocent and defend the principles of compassion and justice that define us as a people. Whatever happens, I'm proud to serve alongside each and every one of you." A ripple of applause and cheers filled the briefing room, the crew's spirits lifted by the captain's words. As they dispersed to take their stations, a sense of quiet determination settled over the Endeavour, the calm before the storm. The Endeavour hung in the void of space, its engines silent, as the crew waited with bated breath for the arrival of the Galactic Council's armada. The tension on the bridge was palpable, each crew member at their station, their fingers poised over their consoles, ready to spring into action at the first sign of the impending threat. Suddenly, a series of sensor alerts pinged, and the science officer's voice rang out, cutting through the heavy silence. "Captain, multiple vessels have just emerged from hyperspace. The Galactic Council's fleet is bearing down on our position." The captain's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the tactical display. "Hail them. Open a channel. Let's see if we can reason with them one last time." Within moments, the bridge was filled with the imposing holographic image of the head counselor, their face a mask of cold determination. "Captain Erickson, you have refused to heed our ultimatum. The time for negotiation has passed. Surrender the child immediately, or face the full might of the Galactic Council's forces." The captain straightened his shoulders, his gaze unwavering. "Counselor, we've already made our position clear. The child is under our protection, and we will not hand it over to an entity that has shown such blatant disregard for its well-being. If you insist on taking it by force, then so be it, but we will not go down without a fight." The head counselor's eyes narrowed, their voice dripping with disdain. "So be it, Captain. You have sealed your own fate, and the fate of your entire species. May the universe witness the consequences of your defiance." With that, the transmission was cut, and the Galactic Council's fleet began to advance, its enormous warships powering up their weapons systems. "All hands, battle stations," the captain barked, his voice echoing through the ship's intercom. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers and return fire on my mark." The Endeavour's crew sprang into action, their fingers flying across their consoles as they brought the ship's defensive systems online. Outside, the first volley of energy beams lanced out from the Galactic Council's vessels, streaking towards the human ship like deadly bolts of lightning. "Evasive action," the captain shouted, and the Endeavour lurched to the side, its maneuverable thrusters firing at full power to avoid the incoming barrage. In the cramped confines of the medbay, the medical team shielded the wounded alien child, their expressions grim as the sounds of the battle raged on outside. They knew that the fate of the child rested on the bravery and skill of the crew, and they silently prayed that their efforts would not be in vain. As the Endeavour returned fire, its weapons blazing, the battle raged on, the two sides locked in a desperate struggle for the future of the galaxy. Neither was willing to back down, each side driven by its own unwavering convictions. In the end, it would be a clash of titans, with the very fate of the universe hanging in the balance. The battle raged on, with the Endeavor's crew fighting with a fierce determination that belied the overwhelming odds they faced. The Galactic Council's warships, massive and powerful, unleashed a relentless barrage of energy beams and missiles, testing the limits of the human ship's defenses. But the Endeavor's crew refused to be cowed by the Council's might. They maneuvered the ship with a deft touch, evading the enemy fire while returning with their own well-aimed counterattacks. The ship's weaponry, though outclassed by the Council's advanced technology, found their mark time and again, chipping away at the hulls of the larger vessels. As the battle raged on, the alien child in the medbay remained in a critical condition, its life hanging by a thread. The medical team worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of their skill and effort into keeping the child alive, even as the ship shook around them from the relentless bombardment. Suddenly, a blinding explosion rocked the Endeavor, sending the crew tumbling as the ship's shields faltered. The science officer's voice rang out, laced with a mix of triumph and disbelief. "Captain, we've taken down the flagship. The Galactic Council's forces are in disarray." The captain, his uniform singed and his face streaked with soot, allowed himself a brief moment of relief. "Excellent work, everyone. Now let's finish this and get that child to safety." With renewed vigor, the Endeavor's crew pressed the advantage, their weapons unleashing a withering barrage that systematically disabled and crippled the remaining Galactic Council ships. One by one, the massive warships began to retreat, their captains realizing that continuing the fight would only lead to their ultimate defeat. As the last of the enemy vessels disappeared into the vastness of space, a cheer went up on the Endeavor's bridge. The crew had defied the might of the Galactic Council and emerged victorious. But the true cost of their triumph had yet to be fully realized. In the medbay, the medical team fought a desperate battle of their own, their faces etched with concern as they struggled to stabilize the alien child's condition. The captain, his expression grim, entered the room and placed a gentle hand on the chief medical officer's shoulder. "How is the child?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The doctor shook her head, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "We've done all we can, Captain, but the child's injuries are too severe. I'm afraid it may not survive." The captain's jaw tightened, his heart sinking. He had hoped against all odds that the child would pull through, that their defiant stand would end in a joyous reunion. But now, as the gravity of their victory sank in, he realized that the true cost of their actions had yet to be fully reckoned with. With a heavy heart, the captain stepped back, his gaze sweeping across the battered but triumphant crew. "Then we must ensure that the child's sacrifice was not in vain. The Galactic Council will answer for their cruelty, and we will forge a new path forward, one where no innocent life will ever be lost to their callousness again." As the Endeavor's crew tended to the wounded and assessed the damage to their ship, the weight of their victory against the Galactic Council began to sink in. The battle had been a resounding triumph, a testament to the unwavering determination and bravery of the human race. But the cost had been high, with the fate of the alien child still hanging in the balance. In the medbay, the medical team worked tirelessly, pouring every ounce of their skill and expertise into the desperate attempt to save the child's life. The captain, his face etched with worry, hovered nearby, his eyes never leaving the child's frail form. "Doctor, how is the child faring?" he asked, his voice tense. The chief medical officer looked up, her expression grim. "It's touch and go, Captain. The child's injuries are severe, and we're doing everything we can to stabilize its condition. But I'm afraid the prognosis is still uncertain." The captain's jaw tightened, his hands clenching into fists. "We can't lose this child, Doctor. Not after everything we've been through." Turning his attention to the rest of the crew, the captain summoned them to the bridge. As they gathered, their faces filled with a mix of pride and apprehension, the captain addressed them, his voice steady and resolute. "My friends, we have achieved a great victory today, one that will echo across the galaxy for generations to come. But our work is not done. We must now uncover the truth behind the Galactic Council's actions and ensure that no other innocent lives are lost to their callousness and cruelty." The crew murmured in agreement, their expressions hardening with determination. "To that end, I'm authorizing a full-scale investigation into the Galactic Council's history and policies," the captain continued. "We need to know what drove them to demand the surrender of this child, and what other atrocities they may have committed in the name of their twisted sense of order." The science officer stepped forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, I've already begun analyzing the data we gathered during the battle, as well as any intelligence we can glean from the Council's communications. There are unsettling indications that their actions may be part of a much larger pattern of oppression and exploitation." The captain nodded, his expression grim. "Then we must uncover the full truth, no matter the cost. The Galactic Council has shown us that they are willing to use brutal force to maintain their stranglehold over the galaxy. But we will not be cowed. We will fight for justice, for the rights of all sentient beings, and for the future of our own species." As the crew dispersed to begin their investigations, a sense of purpose and determination filled the air. They knew that the battle they had fought was just the beginning of a much larger struggle, one that would test the very limits of their resolve and their ability to confront the dark secrets of the Galactic Council. But with the life of the alien child still hanging in the balance, they were more determined than ever to uncover the truth and ensure that no other vulnerable being would ever suffer at the hands of the Council's cruelty.